Doing some good work in getting and paying attention to books online, I was like, how can we translate that into something out in the real world? And this series has proven to be a really perfect opportunity for that. And I'm really excited to have another great lineup for this evening.
Johnny, I spent a long time trying to forget the first 8 years of my life. For some, it might be easy to shake loose their earliest memories, but not for me. No matter how hard I tried, there was always some reminder of childhood. Today, it was seeing my mama's blue eyes on a baby I was holding for the first time. Over the years, there have been other things that took me back. The smells of loam and moss and ferny ground, the taste of ice-cold water. It's been a while, though, since I saw the mountain outside of memory. In 1990, when I was 14, I went up Bloodroot Mountain again after 6 years gone. It was a long walk with Marshall Lunsford behind me, and neither one of us saying a word. The mountain looked different than when I was small. A sawmill had carved a bald place in the land, and the road was paved where it used to be dirt. But I knew we were getting close when we passed Mr. Barnett's. His house was nearly buried behind a briar thicket, just a rusty roof with a stub of chimney poking out of the tangled green. The flag was up on his mailbox, and the same dented truck parked in the weeds, glinting in what was left of the sun. He was probably too old to drive it anymore. I wondered if he would come out, and if he would still know me, but his place was quiet and still. We kept climbing, and it was almost dark by the time we made it to the witch's house. That's what Marshall called it. There's a witch's house up yonder, he said. He caught up and stood panting in the road, head down and eyes shifting toward every sound. But looking up at the house, I forgot about Marshall and only remembered. Behind the posts of a ruined fence, the creek branch rushed downhill over chunks of rock between thorny vines and flowering bushes. The trees were parted just enough for me to see it up there, like a toy I could hold with both hands. A dirty white box with black window holes and the roof a flake of blood. It did look like a witch's house, a haunted place, the hill leading up to it bumpy with stumps and boulders. I could see across the fallen trees in the yard and a weathered barn where nothing lived but the smell of hay and animals. Something splashed in the creek and Marshall jumped. "We better get on before it's too dark to see the road," he said. "You can go by yourself if you want to." Marshall grew quiet and shuffled his feet. "They say she killed a man." "Is that so?" Back then, I could have told him I'd guarantee she killed a man. I could have told him the witch was my mama too, but I kept my mouth shut. I looked at the house and wanted to burn it to the ground, or run up there and find her axe still lodged in a stump and chop the whole place to pieces, barn and all. But first, I would tear through the rooms to see what was left. Scour the lot for any trace of her and Laura and me. A stray bobby pin or a lost shirt button or a length of fishing line. Anything to prove we lived for a time between those trees with that mountain under our feet and that creek water rushing over us. Then I would burn the whole place down and dance in the light of the flames. "For real, Johnny, let's go," Marshall whined, and it was like a spell was broken. I didn't need to look anymore. I had seen it one more time. I turned to go with Marshall, but he was frozen in the middle of the road, staring into the woods across from the house with his mouth hanging open. Between the trunks, there was a greenish glow, a faint ghost light hovering close to the ground. "It's her spirit," Marshall whispered. Then he took off running down the mountain, shoes slapping hard on the pavement. I knew it was foxfire, but I stood there for a long time anyway, looking into the trees. Laura. I had some friends up on the mountain. Sun shined down through the leaves and made fairies for me to play with. I didn't get sad whenever Johnny went off roaming, because when the wind blowed, then fairies came alive. If I laid on the ground, they darted across my body like minnows in the creek. I miss them now when nighttime comes. I'm a grown woman with a child of my own, but I still get lonesome in the dark. I try to remember good things, like how Mama was before she changed. I think about that time she was scaling fish. She dropped a bluegill back in the bucket, and held my face in her slimy hands. I walked around the rest of the day wearing that slime on my cheeks. I felt touched by some magic creature, like a mermaid out of one of Johnny's storybooks. Once, I watched Mama take a bath in the creek when the sun was orange. Naked breasts and fuzzy legs and a swarm of gnats around her head. I stood on tiptoe and reached out to touch her long black hair. It poured down her arms like oil. When she bent to lift me, I was draped in it. One time she made us blackberry cobbler. We walked to the Barnetts after sugar, and I rode on her hip. When I asked Johnny about it later, he said it never happened. He pretended not to remember Mama before she was different, but I can still see our teeth and tongues stained dark with juice. I try to remember for him how she turned the radio loud and danced us around, and the chocolate cake she made when we turned 6. I reminded Johnny of those things, but he always said I dreamed them. He didn't even remember the day we walked down the mountain picking up cans and seen a school bus. There was a child's face in the window, and I asked Mama where they was going. She said they was going to school. Johnny wanted to go with them, but Mama said she could teach us all we needed to know. Later, she showed us how to read with her finger moving underneath the words. I forgot fast, but Johnny loved the storybooks. He read them over and over. She taught us other things too, like how to dig up the ginseng we sold to a fat man down the mountain, and how to can what we growed. There was hot days in the kitchen, washing jars and standing over pots. I liked canning, but Johnny didn't. He wanted to be outside hunting. Mama showed us how to kill rabbits and squirrels and possums with her granddaddy's rifle. I was no good, but Johnny could shoot, and him just a little boy. Once he got a deer, and we had the meat for a long time. When she quit paying attention to us, I missed her bad. I thought I must have got too big to fit in her lap. If I tried to climb up, she didn't put her arms around me. Pretty soon, I gave up. I still loved her, though. I know Johnny loved her, too. But he got mad when she took herself away. One time, he hacked down her little patch of corn with a stick, but it didn't do any good. It was like she didn't notice. Then he set her scarf on fire, a lacy one that hung on her bedpost and used to belong to her granny. He took it out in the grass and held a match to it. Mama went out to stand with him, and they watched it burn together. When the fire dwindled down to ashes, she walked away and left him there. I went to him, but he jerked away. Pretty soon, Johnny gave up like I did. I know why Johnny didn't want to remember the good things. When she started acting different, it was easier to remember the bad. But even in them last 2 years, there was nice times. I got to share her bed whenever I found her there. I'd wind myself in her hair and curl up in the littlest knot I could make against her back. One morning she turned over before I crept off. We stared at each other, and I seen all the shades of blue in her eyes. I understood how she loved me the only way that she could. If Johnny was ever that close to Mama's face, smelling her skin and feeling her warmness, he might have been different. I wish I could remember what it was like inside of her. I picture her belly like a moon, and me and Johnny living in it. The 3 of us was a family then, bound up together in her skin. Them 9 months is why it don't matter where we go or what the years turn us into. We'll always love each other. For a while, we was all part of one body. I kind of got to know Myra, who was the heart of the story, by exploring these characters. And it felt like all of their voices were important, so it was really hard to let go of any voice, you know. But in the end, some of them had to be absorbed because it had to be a readable, story. But yeah, I think the problem was kind of in organizing the voices when I had, this messy collection of character sketches at the end of this first draft. And it was kind of a matter of deciding which voices played off of each other and organizing them into a story and, cohesive, tying all those threads together.
Did you consider Fort Hendricks at any time?
I did. I thought about giving him his own voice, but then I think maybe some characters are so larger than, so I don't know how I don't know if I
I wanted to be in his head, you know. Just let him exist as like a kind of mystical character that even I don't